Welcome to my World History Notes, where I read from the book that I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history, A Bible Believer Looks at World History. You can find the book on lulu.com, amazon.com, or at the Bible Baptist Bookstore, or just follow me here if you ever mind subscribe to my channel. So we're going to begin, kind of wrap up several of the episodes that we've done recently. John Knox, a Scotsman who studied with Calvin in Geneva, Switzerland, took Calvin's teachings back to Scotland. Other Reformed communities developed in England, Holland, and France. The Presbyterian Church traces its ancestry back primarily to Scotland and England. In Scotland, it became the state-sanctioned church. The Lutheran Church was primarily the state Protestant church of the Protestant princes of Germany. The Congregational Church, in at least one source, traces its roots back to the 16th century dissenters in England. The Episcopal and Methodist churches were formed in the 1700s out of the Anglican Church. There are two main points in bringing these little pieces of evidence up here at the end of this series of videos. First, there are two parallel strains of history. One is Satan's attempts to form and mold governments whose purpose is to one day stand against God as one voice and one mass. The swirl of nations engaged in constant warfare and the slave trade, spiritually dominated by state churches, explodes in the 17th century, the 1600s. Second, God uses the conquering impulses of Japheth, the European, if that is correct interpretation of Genesis 9. He's enlarged 927 Genesis to spread the gospel around the world and to create a Bible to be used in the effort. The Vaudois or Waldensians, as J.A. Wiley puts it in his History of Protestantism, did not cross oceans, so God raised up and used the Reformation churches to move his words everywhere. When these churches arrive in America, they will eventually lose their civil powers, but as we will see later, that some painful lessons have to be learned first. The strength of America is its diversity. The large number of religious denominations prevents anyone from taking political control of the country. This is not to say that they are all doctrinally correct, and I'm not saying that the Seventh-day Adventists, Baptists, and Presbyterians are all exactly alike, or that I agree with everything they all say. The point I'm trying to make is that here we have the freedom to go to hell our own way or to go to heaven God's way. And finding out which is which should be a main concern of our lives, but none of the government's business. So next, we're going to discuss the 1700s, known as the 18th century, and focus as well as on the American colonial experience. So some things you should learn is you should have takeaways from the last few sessions we've done. Like you should know the concept that the kings rule at God's command and under his authority are not to be questioned is known as what? What was the Great Awakening? What occurred in Europe that saw the overthrow of the French monarchy and the rise of Napoleon? Cardinal Richelieu proclaimed what concept known from antiquity with regard to the relationship between church and state? What English rebel overthrew the monarchy for a brief period in the 1600s? Name the English preacher and founder of Methodism. Who was the reformer that took Calvin's ideas to Scotland? So these are just some things to consider. You might even like the way the question is posed. You might not agree with the question itself, but at least the topics you should know something about. So I hope we're going to discuss the struggle for the mastery of the world and the rise of Napoleon, 1700 to 1800, in the upcoming sessions. I hope you'll stick with me, and I look forward to talking to you again.